Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on our wonderful planet, everybody. As people are still coming in, would just like to say that today our own internal team member, Phil Goldberg, will be likely facilitating today's discussion. It has the potential to be a particularly heated discussion. We welcome all opinions. This is why we want to talk about this, because it's close to our hearts, our lives, our future, and as spiritual leaders, what do we do? And so we do have some guidelines that I would like us all to adhere to today so that we can continue to function well as a community and leave space for differences of opinions and approaches. So welcome to this ASI gathering. We're glad that you are here, that you've taken this time out to become part of this community for this morning, today. These community webinars are here to support our members and guests and the mission of the ASI. We ask participants to stay connected, accountable, sensitive, and skillful when engaging today. We ask that you agree to create and maintain safe space for learning and growth. To that end, let us all refrain from marketing, self-aggrandizing, while avoiding inflammatory or deliberately destructive comments. If you want to recommend a relevant and appropriate resource to attendees, please do so in the chat box. The ASI will remove participants who engage in harmful activity after one warning. Thank you so much for creating this community with us, showing up with presence, attunement, and self-awareness. So I'll hand you over to my dear friend, Phil.
Thank you, Jack. I'm going to confess right off that I had some trepidation about facilitating this because although the subject was kind of my idea, which is, I guess, why I was called upon, it's an important topic for us to, for all spiritual teachers and leaders to contemplate and discuss. But we're aware of how heated people's feelings can be around these issues. So we want to I want to double what Jack said and plead with everybody. If you have strong feelings, please express them. But if there's disagreements, which there very well might be, please let's live up to our standards of integrity and kindness and treat everybody respectfully. And please be mindful of the time and not when you're called upon, try to be concise and brief. And if you would, all remember to stay muted until it's your turn to speak and use the raise hand function icon to let us know you want to speak, and we'll try to call upon people in order. I too have strong feelings about what's going on, and I'm going to follow my own advice and hold back and start by opening the floor to anybody who would like to start us off, if you would. I want to.
I would just
I hope what I said didn't intimidate people from speaking up.
I just want to add a practical thing that I forgot earlier there, Phil. These meetings are always recorded, and we do give the option at the end if somebody wants to email us and say, actually, I can't let that part of my voice appear on YouTube. And if it's a good reason, of course, we will take out your piece, but otherwise, these are not edited for content. We want to be as honest as we can about what was discussed and put out, unless you feel you can't, for some reason, have your voice out there. We will, of course, respect that. And so by raising your hand, yes, the speaker view, when you speak, if your video is on, you will be recorded. Jim.
You're muted, Jim. Jack, you're muted too.
Jim, click on unmute one more time.
Click the little audio icon in the lower left. There's a red slash through it, and if you click it, that slash should go away, and you should be able to speak.
Can we unmute him from our side?
No, can only ask him to unmute. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Jim. So there'll be a little icon that appears, okay? Do you see it?
Well, that
There
was
you go.
strange. I've been in, a lot of Zoom meetings, but for some reason it would not mute. So I just wanted to open up by saying my impression that this is supposed to be a group of, as called spiritual teachers, and there may be followers. That's a concept. For me, we're going to be talking about how to maintain your peace and freedom while entering into the world, sort of like the chop wood, carry water, or the mountain. After everything disappears, then it comes back, and you get fully engaged. And it being a way of not necessarily getting polarized. You can have strong opinions, vote however you want, but you remain sort of freer, able to listen to the other side. So, since nobody else raised their hand, I just wanted to say that, because with all this cautionary preamble, I am not anticipating that we're going to be talking about who should vote for what and who's right and all that. More like, how do we maintain a sense of presence and, let's say, boundaryless consciousness as we enter into the workplace, the social environment. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, I'm glad you started that way, because I'm sure most people would agree, as I certainly do, that that's central to our role as spiritual leaders. And I would like to open up the floor to people it's one thing, as Jim said, to maintain our own equanimity and inner peace, but some of us are called upon to help others do the same. People who are afraid, people who are angry, people who have very strong feelings. And I think maybe one of the things we can help each other with is how to best help our constituents and our students and so forth. Zoltan? Yeah, we don't hear you. You seem to be unmuted, but we couldn't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I have problem with microphone. It's interesting. Second person. So from my point of view, it is really interesting, because many years I wanted to participate in politics and social life, because I had a dream which was turned to the lucid dreaming and to chain of visions. And I saw very negative events in the future. And I saw also the solutions for that. And one one part of the solutions were spiritual masters, teachers, and psychics. Those will be able to stop these things, and we need to heal not only our physical bodies, but also our mental bodies and social bodies too. And this way we can do it with stronger cooperation. And cooperation is basic for this. Thank you.
Did you say compassion, Zoltan? Is that what I heard?
Compassion and cooperation.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Annie?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm just responding actually to the email that was sent about this event. And it seems like it's calling upon us to contemplate our attitude toward this, our approach, and if there's any, my sense is there could be spiritual bypassing going on in, in our, like, oh, it's all just Maya, or, it's a cyclical thing. And if one feels authentically that way, that's great. But it made me more alert to the possibility of spiritually bypassing. And in terms of how one responds, with others, and, in terms of political activism, I would say the best recommendation from my point of view, obviously, is just be authentic. I mean, if you really are called out to protest, protest. But to really hopefully avoid any sort of rationalization that keeps it at arm's length and keeps you from responding in an authentic manner according to your own makeup, I guess you could say. Does that make sense?
It certainly does to me. Personally, one of the reasons this matters so much to me is I've heard a lot of spiritual bypassing. But I must say, in the last couple of months, less than I used to. So I'm encouraged by that.
Yeah,
But
it's very much in our faces. So, it would erode that habit, I think, because it's happening. So, yeah. Well, thank
yeah.
you.
And I'd be curious to hear how many others have the similar concerns, or the opposite, think spiritual bypassing is unreal or not to be concerned about.
Okay.
Sid?
Hello, everybody. I see this as a real opportunity for us and our community, because many of us have spent years to be able to see the beauty and innocence in everyone and everything, to be able to see past the fear, or to see what the fear is made of. And at a time when there is the us and them division and the fear and suffering that is becoming more and more pervasive, we're ones that can see past the division. Even though on the surface, our parts and our personalities, we might want to be out there protesting. And I welcome that and invite that and appreciate following many of you who are speaking of that. I think we can go even deeper at the same time and help to see the common humanity, to see the beingness, to see the beauty that pervades this all on both sides, on all sides. And then the advocacy can come from that. It can come instead of fear, instead of a sense of them. Like, we don't even, as we go deeper into this, there is no them. We know that, right? There is no them. The them disappears. There's only an us. And so as we come from that place, then if we want to be activists or even train activists, but my invitation is that we do it from the us, that's where we're uniquely positioned, where most of the folks out there waving their flags can't do what many of my friends here can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid. I'm sure most people would be in sync with that. Connie, hey.
Hi. I'm so glad we're having this, and I'm glad I'm following Sid in this conversation. I just want to kind of add another dimension to what Sid said. I'm noticing for myself, I'm feeling more grief than anger and reactivity. You
Hmm.
know, when I was at Berkeley in the 60s, it was all about anger. And the grief is about the return of shadow projection. I mean, this is my shtick. Some of you know that. And the only way I've been able to feel my voice, have my voice, make a contribution and feel less powerless is by teaching shadow work to people. So I just want to give like a really short version of that to the group and see if anybody has any thoughts about it. I look at every single crucial pressing problem that we have now through the lens of shadow projection, whether it's xenophobia, fear of immigrants, whether it's racism, sexism, ageism, homophobia, transphobia, whether it's the wars that are going on, and historically, all of the genocide and the Holocaust, it's about the projection, how we unconsciously attribute to other individuals and groups what's unacceptable in ourselves. And the result is just what Sid said, us and them, enemy making. We lose the inherent spiritual interconnection in the body of humanity. And we become tribal. We regress to tribalism, an earlier stage of human development. And so now Trump has weaponized this. He weaponized shadow projection, and the government is now institutionalizing it. And what I'm finding is when I spend time with people in classes and explain this, and they have this lens, that they can then examine their own shadow projections and return to their spiritual practices. Because for me, this is a spiritual practice. This is about moving from othering and enemy making to interconnectedness and compassion and empathy. If we recognize our own shadow, we're instantly empathic to the other person or group. And so we come back to, you know, whatever we call it, loving awareness. We move from shadow work to metta, you know, whatever your practice, whatever your language. So for me, it's been horrifying and disturbing. And I feel like the loss of my dreams and ideals as a baby boomer, the loss of the, you know, what we thought was progress, it's all regression now. And the only thing that I've kind of found to shed more light rather than more darkness, to own my own darkness so that I'm not contributing to it in the collective. And I know that's not a solution. I'm not reducing everything to shadow work, right? Because it's so much bigger than that now. But what I'm saying is in our own psyches, that's a place where we can work and return to what we experience spiritually, the unity, the interconnectedness, or what we know. If we don't experience it, we know that cognitively. And we can remember that as we participate, as we teach, as we work with students, as we do activism, just kind of be watching through that lens. And I find it really helpful. Thanks.
Can I ask you a question, Connie?
Yeah.
Two, actually, that came to mind. You said something about shadow being institutionalized and weaponized. And I'd like to hear you say how that plays out and what you mean by that. And the other is, and this I'm sure will apply to what many of us are thinking and have to say. When we're called on, or if you're called on as a therapist and a citizen, to move toward empathy and compassion and oneness and all the spiritual virtues that we at least aspire to, if not experience. how does that translate under conditions where there may be threat,
Yeah.
where there's danger?
Yeah, well, that's why I added this is not the solution. I'm not reducing everything to psychology,
Right.
right? I mean, people are leaving the country for that very reason.
Yeah.
And, some of us are going to need to act if we feel that endangered. So I don't want to reduce everything to this. Trump is weaponizing shadow projection from the beginning of his very first campaign with the anti-immigrant rants. And it just reminds me of anti-Semitism and what happened in Germany. It's the same mechanism psychologically of dehumanizing a whole group. So now he's got the government against DEI, which is all about racism, right? It's all about shadow projection on disenfranchised groups that are finally getting some advantage from the culture. The way he talks about women, and so I think that the sort of movement toward rights for minority groups is being removed, is regressing. That what we thought was a movement of progress is regressing now into this more primitive psychology. And he's set up the government with all these people who are obeying. Either they believe that or they just want the power and they're following through. So he's institutionalizing patriarchy. I mean, I want to say white male superiority, but it's more complex than that.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of the danger, I think that inner work is not enough. I'm not saying that we all should only do inner work and everything will be okay. I don't believe that. I think that's a naive position. And the same thing with spiritual work. It's not sufficient in a time of danger. I mean, that's another example of spiritual bypass, I think. So we have to look at, whether we're in an endangered group that's carrying shadow projection now in a collective way. And it could be a religious group, it could be an ethnic group, it could be a political group. Now he's going after Act Blue, which is the Democratic fundraising machine. So I think we really have to examine that and decide whether we're in danger. Neil's family, my husband's family comes from Holland, and we've been thinking about whether we should try to go to Holland for a while. So each person has to just kind of consider, I think, and not default to psychology or spirituality only in a real time of danger. Many of us on the call probably have ancestors who were, in Europe in World War II and had to escape. And that's, it's in our genes. So I'm not saying to ignore those signals.
Good. Thanks,
Okay,
Connie.
thanks, Phil. Love you.
Laura?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for having this, for being the facilitator, Phil. And this is my first ASI online gathering. So I really appreciate this space being made for us to dialogue about this. With the people that I work with in my therapeutic practice and my students, many of them are on the non-dual path. And it's really interesting because some of those people are very much, it seems like right now, in a bypassing mode. They just don't see this as being real and worth their energy of getting triggered by what's happening in the media. So from that standpoint, what I'm finding helpful is to approach it from a unity consciousness standpoint. Even though they may be unplugged, they do see and connect with the suffering of others. So from that particular standpoint, we're able to kind of move a little bit out of the bypassing and into the shared experience that we're having. Now, I have other students and people in my therapeutic practice that are on the other end of the spectrum. They're in tremendous fear right now, and they're very much in a divided position and wanting to do a lot of othering. And so with that, we're looking at what was just being talked about by Connie, by looking at the shadow and what might be getting projected right now, and where can we reel that back in and just look at what's happening personally. And then just briefly, the third person I'm working with right now, they are on the non-dual path. It might be Advaita Vedanta, or it's Zen Buddhism, or Dzogchen, but they're engaged. So they're politically active, but they're not othering. They're not coming from that split-minded thinking of us versus them. So I just want to share, I don't know how many other people can relate to this. I'm working with a varied group of people right now, and they're coming from all different positions. And what I'm trying to do in my role as teacher and therapist is my own temptation to project or to cast any shadow on where they're at, and really pulling it back home into what's happening within my own being and trying to abide in pure awareness as much as possible. So there's just a lot of balancing going on right now, emotionally, right, mentally, and physically and spiritually. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you,
You're
Laura.
welcome.
Important stuff. Stacy. You need to unmute. There you go.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here and share, first from my real raw human feelings, which I needed to feel before I could move through, and um, I was absolutely shocked at the results of the election. I did not expect it. And I had to come to a realization and an acceptance that the majority of people who think and feel the way that I do, that we aren't the majority, that we're the minority. And that was a pretty bitter pill to swallow. And I found myself initially, and sometimes even going back to being involved in the stages of grief, being very upset, being very angry, being freaked out, just being in denial, just all those things. And like I said, at times I get back in there, but I have done some things to get myself back into balance because I'm no good to myself or anyone else if I'm not in balance, if my nervous system is out of whack. And what's been really helpful to me is being mindful about my news intake and not get sucked into the negative vibration that's constantly out there. I have pretty much two shows that I watch on an almost daily basis. I have upped my news intake since the election, but I look at it from a being in this world but not of it sort of way. Like I need to be aware of what's going on without getting into all of the energy sucking um, emotions behind it. So I stay aware. And also, initially, I was doing some volunteer work with an organization fighting, doing battle against all the perceived evils going on. And with a lot of reflection, what I came to understand or to realize is that in the grand scheme of things, and I believe all of us, have chosen to be alive at this exact moment in history. It's not a coincidence. And that we all have a role to play if we choose to. And that the more in touch we are with our life's purpose, the more we're in touch with what that role is. So I have moved into a place that resonates much more for me, which is focusing on lighting a light rather than cursing the darkness and using my skills and gifts not to fight against anything or anyone, but rather to create the end result, the outcome that I want to see in the world. So it may sound like a subtle distinction, but it's actually a huge distinction. I'm not fighting against anything anymore. I'm putting my energy into um, what I want the outcome to be, because I do believe that we're at the beginning of a new paradigm here. And eventually, the more people that wake up will shift from a reality based in fear to one of love. So, I'm much more even keeled right now, and I don't have a lot of opportunities to have this sort of dialogue, so I'm very grateful for it. But yeah, so that's feeling my feelings. I had to do that. Spiritual bypassing all that does not work for me. And focusing on what can I do to make a difference. Um, and my reason for being here alive at this time in history. So thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Stacy. Frankly, one of the reasons we thought of doing this is so many people, especially, or not especially, but including spiritual teachers, feeling isolated and alone, and the value of knowing that our peers are experiencing the same thing. Just one thing about lighting a light in the darkness. This may sound trite, but I was reading a political commentator last week on the anniversary of the beginning of the American Revolution. And it occurred to me, reading her analysis, that we all know about Paul Revere and the people fighting in Lexington. And Paul Revere, the one if by day and two by land and two if by sea. But we forget about the two guys who climbed the tower in the church to light the lights. And apparently that was a really dangerous mission, to just go up there and hang the lanterns that, you know, were needed to set the tone of the self-defense that was to come. So there's a metaphor for you. Brianna.
Phil, it sounds like you're also a reader of Heather Cox Richardson. Is that
Yes, you're
correct?
right.
Yeah, she's my favorite way to get the news. It's at a level that I can handle. Which leads me into what I wanted to share. First of all, just thank you so much for hosting this. I'm always grateful to just, yeah, feel less isolated and hear other people's perspectives and know there's other people out there doing good work in the ways that they know how. And it's really lovely to be here. And thanks for the chance to speak. I'm a mind, body, spirit practitioner. I work with people on nervous system regulation, and I'm also a spiritual mentor in that capacity. And I just bring that up because I work with people in the body, and I've, in my own experience in the past, in my own spiritual pursuits, was like living in a very disembodied state, and everything is very conceptual, and I was wondering why my spiritual practices weren't landing, and that's because I really was not living in my body. I wasn't really aware that I had a body, if that even sounds weird. Like, I just didn't even understand what the word embodiment meant. And once I started moving into those kinds of things, everything has made so much more sense. And it doesn't, we can have these theologies about different things, but the lived experience and what some of you have already spoken to is like, people that are needing to mobilize because they're the populations that are being targeted, there is no opportunity for bypassing in that state of being. Those are people that are on the ground being affected, their families, like that is a lived, embodied experience. And those of us that even have the choice to bypass, that is a privilege because it probably signifies that we're not being directly affected yet. But I also want to give some understanding and compassion to people that are in a state of choosing to bypass, because from my perspective, it's really just coming from a place of a lack of capacity. And I love the word capacity because it doesn't really carry judgment. It just is an isness. And we can always work on our level of capacity to show up for anything in any given time and start where we are. And for me, that's like regulating the breath, learning how to move energy and shake it out of my body when I feel flooded with stimulation, or learning how to bring things down and discharge anger in healthy ways so that we can always move from a place of conscious awareness and move from a place of groundedness rather than reactivity. And those are all skills, and not all of us have ever been taught those in childhood or adulthood. So I just wanted to bring that forward because I think it's very easy to even slip into othering when we start talking about those who bypass and those who show up. But I think if we can have compassion and understanding and meet people where they are when they simply don't have the capacity to even read the news or to show up for a protest or to do any number of activities that would be helping the collective, sometimes we're just so overwhelmed with what's right in front of us. Some of us are still dealing with the traumas of our own personal lives, or, dealing with unemployment or various things that are just very right here that we don't have the energy or the capacity to think outside of that. And that's one of the places I work one-on-one and in small groups with people to do just that, people that are interested in moving beyond the self and starting to move outward. I find that it has to happen mind, body, spirit all together. And sometimes in spiritual spaces, we actually bypass the body. So I just wanted to bring that in as an awareness piece. But thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Sounds like also, and Brianna, that you're appealing to us to give permission, those of us who are feeling pulled to activism and doing something, to give permission to people who need to tune out. And that's a valid response and something people need to do. And when I encounter that, I have to remember to give them that space and hope that it won't be permanent.
Yeah, and maybe even like in the nuance of language, I don't know that I would call it permission.
Yeah.
But I would call it compassion and trying to find places to meet people exactly where they are. And if we can put in that spark of awareness that motivates someone to turn it around, or we can help resource people, really, that's what it comes down to me, is like, how can we help resource people that are in need in that way to help bring people into the fold, or whatever you want to call it, for helping people to start where they are.
Very good. Thank you, Brianna. Linda is up next.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I too really appreciate that we're having this conversation. And I was just listening to the last person who was talking and thinking about how, from my point of view, needing to tune out is different from advocating to tune out.
Good.
And it's really important in my mind to make that differentiation. when I got the email, which I guess was about a week or so ago, maybe more, I went into major reaction myself. I mean, my whole body started vibrating. And that's my sure sign that, oh boy, there, there's some feelings here, and there's something that needs to happen for me. I need to pay attention. If the Zoom program had been, let's say, the next day, I don't think I would have been able to speak because I was in this mix of lots of different feelings, including anger, including, tremendous sadness, you name it. It was a kind of a big, because it was a big vibration in the nervous system, it was all mixed up. So that's my sure sign that, oh boy, I really need to, pay attention to this, sort it out, which is exactly what I've done. And I wound up doing a lot of writing, and which is one of the ways that I do that, and making a long list of subject matter and things that I might want to say in this meeting. And I'm saying all of this because I really feel strongly that it's very, very important to do the inner work, especially when someone is really aware of this kind of vibration in the nervous system, because once it shows up, it's trying to get your attention. Certainly, I know that personally. What I've done, because I have some very strong and relevant personal experiences, my family, many, many, many years ago, was directly affected by the Red Scare in the 1940s and 1950s. And that was something that I have found out that most people don't seem to know very much about it. And I think it's a very important piece of history and something that would be good to know about for people. The direct effect of that for lots and lots and lots of people across the country was to destroy lives and careers. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that because I don't need to right now. But I just need to say that I think is, for me, part of the source of my reaction to all of the subject matter and the whole idea of people tuning out, or advocating tuning. I don't mind people tuning out. That's fine. It's something that needs to happen sometimes. But advocating tuning out is different. And I don't appreciate that. And it scares me because I feel like we need everybody on board right now, given what's happening in the country. And everybody paying attention to what's happening in their own way, from their own awareness, from their own development, certainly. I mean, not everyone is going to be the same. I know that. But unfortunately, I really do feel like advocating tuning out, advocating what we call spiritual bypassing, it borders on not caring about other people. Or at least that's a concern that I have. That's something that comes up. And I can't stand the idea of people not caring about other people. I just feel like, oh boy, we really need to work with that. So what did I do? I'm much older than I used to be, and I'm not doing I retired from psychotherapy a couple of years ago, and I'm doing spiritual mentoring now with people, just a few women one-on-one. All my work in my career has been primarily with women. So I'm doing some one-on-one work, and I've done a little bit of group stuff, but it's informal, and it's more like establishing spiritual friendships. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do? I really felt after the election, I needed to be able to be with what was happening and also do something. Anyway, I wound up running a program through the winter of just 5 circles. That's a lot of what I've done in my work. And I had a group of women coming to these circles, and the whole purpose of the circle was for people to be able to say what's going on for them. It's talking stick circles, for me to share a lot of things that I've learned over the years, and in terms of what's happened for me in my spiritual development, and what I, think is reality, and the levels of reality, and the complexities of all of it. And so it was an opportunity for me to feel like I was helping people by sharing, because they were all younger, a lot younger than I am. And so I did that, and it was great. I mean, it really did help people, because each person was trying to find her way, and her way was going to be different from other people's way of engaging or working with people, to just very, very different for each one. And so I felt like I was contributing, so it kind of met their needs, and it met my need to feel like I was actually doing something, and worked well. And now I'm back to, okay, now what's next? I don't know. I do have to control a kind of news addiction that I have had pretty much my whole life, partially because I'm really, really interested in what's going on, and I need to know what's going on. And I also need, because if I don't know, then I can't assess, based on my life experience and my studies of history and a lot of other things, what is happening. And so I do that, but I have to constantly balance and stay deeply connected to my heart, and listening to my heart, and following whatever the instruction is that comes. And
Thank
so,
you, Linda. Oh,
or I could say, but I'm going to stop.
thank you very much. Just as a point of interest, I just was reading a review of a new book by a historian, I believe, called Red Scare. So if anybody wants to learn more about what Linda referred to about the 40s and 50s, that's a source. Villasini, either way.
Yes, perfect. First, thank you, Jack. Thank you, Philip, for this forum. I was eager to join it. I've been kind of, what my experience is one of guilt right now, because I think I'm a great spiritual bypasser. And I would love to, I just decided after the election, okay, I'm done. For 4 years, I'm done. I don't care anymore. But of course, I do care, and we do care. It's just the question of how to use the energy. And I think I'm looking from a group like this, some support or some permission also for trying things that I didn't try before. I think Democrats are good at reaching out to other Democrats, get out the vote, all of that. But I feel in my heart, I feel that, oh, a deer just went by my window, that we need to reach out also to people with different opinions, and share and discuss. And of course, that's the hardest thing in this day and age, is to have political discussions with other views. And there are a few people I have met that have inspired me greatly, not people of influence or status, but they can just sit down in a group and say, hey, you know what, I think this platform is for the birds. I mean, they just speak in that language, and they get through to people, and they are able to connect and convince people to look at things a little differently. And to me, I can't even blame Donald. I really can't. I can just blame all the people who voted for him, and it's those people that can sway, things back. So how to reach out to them. And, I'm feeling guilt because I'm I don't have the courage to do it, or I don't have there's a certain spark in people of a warmth and a down to earth that gets through to people. And I wish that I had that. And I want to kind of be around that and absorb it, where I have the courage to speak to people in a way that's not attacking or defensive or, but is positive. And I don't know how to do that. And I thought of writing letters, starting a pen pal. I had a different word for it. But anyway, where you reach out to somebody who's of a different party and say, hey, I want to know, how do you feel about this? What's going on? I kind of need some new perspectives and, just get some dialogue going. But then, I don't have the courage really to do that. I came up with a beautiful draft like 6 months ago, and I haven't sent it out to anybody. And then in the congregation of which I'm a leader, the most outspoken thing I could do was put a bumper sticker in my car, before the election. Otherwise, there are people on both sides, and I didn't have the courage to bring it up. But I feel what we have to do is, at least some of us, is speak to the other side in a convincing way. And so that's what I'm putting out there. And I would just love any support down the road, or permission, or anything. But thank you. Thank you again. Namaste.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Shara.
Hello, everyone. Really wonderful to be dipping our toes into this immense ocean. And I love the email because it articulated some attitudes. And I was very struck that 7 of the attitudes were more like perspectives and 1 was about action. But even like, we can't hide behind our spirituality, we all have to pitch in. Like, how do we pitch in and why do we pitch in? That's all unknown. And the attitudes were all put as I'm tuning out, I'm unattached, I'm rolling up my sleeves. And, that's been weighing on me, kind of the insufficiency of the I. So I'm really talking right now because I need help. So I'm going to put my email in the chat. And if anyone resonates with what I have to say, I need my we to figure out a path, maybe even a new path. So I'm a unity minister. We're a many paths, one God type community. We have about 600 churches in the US. I was just appointed to the board of the Unity Worldwide Ministries Board. So I actually have influence. I actually have, but what to do and why to do it is a deep unknown. And I have a theory that in levels of development, maps of consciousness, most of our spiritual lineages were formed before the awareness of systemic influence and power even came online in consciousness. So our traditions are designed to help individuals deal with systems that they don't realize they're empowered to influence and even create. So I have a sense that we're actually needing to develop our lineages to be more systems based, to influence on that level. And I don't see anyone doing it. I don't know who my people are. I don't know who the role models are. Some of the social justice that is done in communities can be very humanitarian based, which matters, of course, but I'm looking at how do we make a difference, like on a level that I think Connie was talking about institutionalized the shadow. How do we institutionalize the antithesis of that? So I'm very curious in like vision. Who are we? What are we for? What are we excited about? How do we articulate what we want to have come forward? How do we bring different perspectives and traditions together to catalyze and potentiate that with complexity? And And yes, and my sense is that one of the compassionate ways to look at it is doing this as spiritual leaders with kind of interdependent complexity. We're just new at it, like we're infants and toddlers in a evolution that the moment is bringing forward the relevancy of. And whatever that is, I'd love to be part of its emergence. And I think it really is a we leadership model. Yeah, and I'll just end with the irony. I'm also a consultant for the Office for Victims of Crime. And I've been doing this for 20 years. And I have a list of 50 words I can't say, as I'm censored to say. There are things from like diversity and equity and trans and gender, things you might expect. But I'm also forbidden to say words like culture and the word fair and the word inclusive or inclusivity. And inclusivity is one of the core values of my spiritual community. And yet my spiritual community spans the political spectrum, but they're all supporting our core values of inclusivity, even those who see differently than me politically. So we're all in my community creating an island of coherence from the political spectrum, even if the larger narrative is antithetical to our microcosm. So I guess I'm watching and learning and putting out my signals, and would love to find my my people in this emergence that I feel we need to almost create, maybe for the very first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherrod. I think you're bringing up very important points, and you may be one of the few members of ASI who has an institutional affiliation. I think we tend to be freelancers. We tend to be independent spiritual teachers, which, and I think a lot of people are feeling there's a certain advantage to being part of a larger institution, especially when it comes to getting something done in the world. But one of the things that's come up among independent spiritual teachers is, are there ways to come together the way churches and synagogues and mosques come together? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's something to consider. Hey, Fred.
Hi, Phil. Thank you for doing this. Briefly, my affiliation is twofold here. I am the Pracharak or Outreach Minister for the West Michigan Hindu Temple, but I also have a leadership role in our local chapter here in Grand Rapids, Michigan for Self-Realization Fellowship. And so I have found that the work that I've been doing over the past few months, or really longer, is first of all, bringing a sense of hope to those people who come to me for any sort of counseling, and also to engage as deeply as possible with any action. So I do take the attitude of spirituality and practicality and blending them as much as I possibly can. So yes, I do go to protests. I am in contact with my representatives and my senator. All three of them are Democrats, by the way. And again, talking to people, talking them off the ledge on occasion. And of course, trying, you know me, Phil, I try to incorporate humor into everything I do. And so my constant companions, aside from the great political thinkers and pundits of the time, are like Stephen Colbert. It's very important to me, and I try to transmit that attitude as well. One thing that I wanted to mention that spiritual institutions often shy away from anything that is remotely partisan. I think that a lot of the challenges that we're dealing with today go far beyond partisanship, but they still wear the veil of partisanship. And speaking of SRF for a while, of course, if you speak to any of the representatives, the monks or the nuns, if you read SRF literature, they're always going to talk about the platitudes of brotherhood, of kindness, compassion, etc., etc. But in studying the magazines, the old SRF magazines from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, as I have done in recent times, I am fascinated by how Yogananda and those disciples at that time were actively engaged in what we would call activism. The anti-racist groups that Yogananda and the others were connected with, and they also name names. That's something that you don't see in a lot of the literature today from institutions. They were actually calling out the KKK back in those times. The so-called silver shirts. Those of you who are not aware, the silver shirts were a neo-Nazi organization here in the United States during World War II. And it didn't take that to inspire me. I would certainly be on the path that I am without knowing this, but it is a greater inspiration to know that that sort of activism existed back in the day. And one other thing too, Phil, you just mentioned briefly how other religious bodies are reacting at this time. And I think you know that I'm very active in the interfaith community here in Michigan. And I partner with my clergy counterparts whenever I can, because there certainly is a shared sense of concern, of fear, and all of that. So when there is an opportunity to come together in that way, I'm right there.
Thanks, Fred. And I think that's important because it's good for us to know that some of the spiritual teachers we revere, non-dual teachers, and people who were very eager to talk about reality and illusion, they were also engaged. Some of you know I wrote a biography of Yogananda, and I, like Fred, was really surprised to find how outspoken he was about world events. And I would add that in some cases, like his, they did so at considerable risk. He was a British subject through most of the years he was here and could have been deported. And he was being spied on by the Brits for his support of Gandhi and so forth. And Sri Aurobindo was a leading voice in the Indian independence movement. So we have some role models if we if we want to turn to them. Annie, did you speak before?
Yeah, I was going to make it brief, but if it's
Okay, yeah,
if
I want to
it's
call on
Dr.
people who haven't spoke.
Yeah, I did. That did occur to me. Just very anecdotal. I'm a substitute teacher in the area, so I'm very much on the ground with high schoolers, really with the people. And recently, I'm in a very Republican area, and this is anecdotal, but um, there's been this effort to defund several school initiatives like International Baccalaureate, ACE, all these very different educational streams. And what was interesting, I saw all these folks that I think the majority of the folks voted Republican, all get behind trying to fight against this. So I just wanted to make an obvious point that people will be called forth. And I also spoke up some to protect these very important parts of our educational system. And I noticed that the partisanship kind of just went away because it was so important to all these educators. So I just wanted to share that very briefly.
Thank
On
you.
an anecdotal level. Thanks.
Rick.
Hi. It's interesting and telling that in a meeting of 60 people in an organization that's all about integrity, everybody seems to be on one particular side of the political spectrum.
How do you know?
Well, maybe the guys on the other side are afraid to speak up here, but you can do that. We won't bite you. Anyway, I interviewed a cosmologist the other day, and he was saying that both in nature and in society, there's a pattern, which is that collapse or breakdown precedes breakthrough. That there's always some kind of crumbling of the old structures before a new structure can emerge. So that could perhaps give us a little bit of optimism. Also, like back in the early 80s, I read a book called Prophecies and Predictions, Everyone's Guide to the Coming Changes by Moira Timms. And basically, she just collected all the ancient prophecies she could find from around the world and looked at what they had predicted and correlated it with things that had already happened, and then extrapolated forward to things that hadn't yet happened, but which they were all more or less in agreement, and kind of, predicted, okay, it looks like this is going to happen. And what they all predicted was what I just said, that there's going to be some major collapse, but that there'll be kind of a rainbow after the storm. Linda made the point about currently balancing oneself and staying connected to her heart. I was on a boat ride with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi back in the 70s, and he was talking about just this thing, that there's going to be this big phase transition and that things will be much better afterwards, but that it could be kind of rough. And someone said, well, how can we survive this phase transition? And he said, hold on to the self. So I think that's what we're all doing. We all have our ways of being in tune with the self or with the heart or whatever, and it might be necessary to do so even more deeply as the chaos increases, as it may. And the people that others in the chat and have just been mentioning, like MLK and Gandhi and others like Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, were all exemplars of holding on to the self, not losing their cool in the midst of tremendous challenges. So those are just some thoughts I wanted to get out.
Thanks, Rick. I just have to editorialize on behalf of myself. I've been hearing things like, oh, there's going to be destruction and then the new age will dawn for 50 more years. And I have come to feel that's all well and good, and there may be truth in it, but the danger is we think it'll happen automatically. And maybe the dawn needs a little help.
Well, actually, I wanted to add that point that it's not, we can't just sort of sit back and watch it all happen. Everything's going to be rosy. We have to actively contribute. And one point I was talking with Jack about last night is that, and one of the reasons I feel that the ASI exists is that spirituality is an important component in the trends of time and what the direction they might take. I think it's very fundamental and very influential, and it's kind of under the radar because it's subtle, but I think it's really important. And I think that spiritual teachers and leaders who kind of violate the trust that is placed in them by behaving unethically are sabotaging that endeavor and thus weakening the influence that is critically needed of spirituality in the world. So it's incumbent upon anybody who takes a spiritual role to try to maintain the highest ethical standards.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rick. I just want to point out we have 20 minutes left. There's a number of hands up. So I want to make sure we get to everybody. I'm going to call on Sven because it's occurred to me that I don't know if there are others other than Sven who are not in America. And it would be useful to have that perspective. So Sven, would you unmute, and you need to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, first of all, thank you for organizing this meeting. As you rightly say, I'm not in America. I'm in Denmark.
We want Greenland, Sven.
Yeah, yes. So, our situation is a little different, but of course, we are also influenced by what's happening over there. And indeed, everybody in the world, I think, is influenced by all the uncertainty that we experience in this time. And yeah, it's been saddening on one hand to see all the regressive tendencies in the world, as you also talked about happening in the United States, but we also see, maybe not to the same extent, but and different from different countries, we also see these regressive tendencies to some extent in Europe. But at the same time, I also think that, as strangely as it may sound, that it's also a time for an opportunity for us for a accelerated spiritual awakening. And one teacher once said that nobody wants to wake up from a comfortable dream. But if we are in a nightmare, then it may be easier to wake up actually. So there is kind of a collective pressure, that makes it really more urgent to wake up these days, and that can be the positive outcome. Yes, and well, I just also want to say that I've really enjoyed listening to all of you. I find there's so much wisdom in this group here, and from so many different angles. So that to me also gives me some hope. You Americans are not just dumb people, but there's also a lot of wisdom. It's maybe the darkness is getting stronger, but the light is also getting stronger. That's the impression I guess. So thank you to everybody for what you have been sharing. And I'm thrilled to see you, Phil, and Rich Archer. We are old spiritual brothers, have known each other from early back in the 70s. So just from my heart to all of you Americans, I really feel with you.
Thank you, Sven. Thanks for that. Very important. Next up seems to be Scott.
Well, thank you all. I heard the word emergence earlier, and I really love that word. Kind of goes with the opportunity, which I think is far huger than just spiritual development. I mean, it's opportunity for a very different way of living our lives and being. And one thing that has supported me so much in all of this is the study of history. Linda mentioned history. And I just want to lift it up again because reading critical history has helped me understand why this is happening, how it could happen, and how so much of it is actually inevitable. It has me thinking about a post-entitlement world where we're really forced to come together, work together, live together. And having that sense of context and understanding, it frees up so much energy to, attend to my own capacity,
my relationships, my writing, my work. And I feel very alone in my study of history. And so that's partly why I just want to lift it up, is because I just can't say enough about how much it has supported me. I don't believe the rainbow is inevitable at all, especially from an environmental point of view. We're entitled to our next meal as much as the squirrel outside my window, post-entitlement world. And I think we're getting a glimpse of that and the hot fire that we're called to sit in and the transformational potential in that. So thank you. That's what I've got.
Thank you, Scott. Wallace? You're muted.
Got me unmuted?
You're good now.
Right, great. Yeah, I'm very conscious. I'm from Ireland. I'm a spiritual teacher from Dublin in Ireland. And I'm very conscious that I'm not as au fait with what's going on in America as you guys, and nor am I as close to it in terms of connected and attached to it. But what I wanted to share was something from that kind of outlier perspective, in that in Ireland here, and specifically in Northern Ireland, I don't know if you remember the Troubles there, if it was covered, we had the most incredibly vicious, deeply divided experience from when I was 14 years of age until I was 60 years of age when I moved to Dublin. And that experience was, many people thought it would never actually be solved. Many people couldn't see the way. And do you know who were the people behind solving it? Were the spiritual teachers, the counselors, the therapists. And the politicians got the glory in the end. But if it wasn't for the years of work done at the grassroots and little meetings, bringing people together patiently, building bridges and not walls, like the Pope frequently said, by the people in those communities, that peace, when it came quickly, but it would never have come at all if it wasn't for years and years of that kind of work at the grassroots. And so I want to put it up to you, American spiritual teachers and healers, that this is your task now. This is your role, to get out there into American society, to call meetings together, to build bridges, and to bring people together in that oneness that we all talk about. Because the peace in Northern Ireland and in Ireland appears to be permanent. It's a complete peace. There's no more violence. There's no more castigating and othering people. It's a complete healing. Now, I wouldn't say it's completely without any disturbance, but compared to what it was, it is a miracle. And I want to put it up to all of you guys to get out there and create that miracle in America. And I believe you can do it if you really want to. You're the only ones who can do it, in fact. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Wallace, for that perspective and the heartfelt communication. We appreciate it. David.
Hey, Phil. and Rick and Jack, by the way. I have I have something of a meta comment, not a higher comment, but something around the things I've been hearing. And that is what I was drawn to this particular Zoom because of all of the statements that you guys put in the email that you were hearing about backing away from, avoiding, this world, which is an illusion, and yada, yada. We all know the language. My original teachers, half a century ago, were an order of Christian mystics. And one of the things that they did wherever they went was to do some kind of service project in their communities. And while they were teaching a very pure, non-dual awakening, they felt that service was a part of the process. And that's what I would like. I probably should have gotten on earlier to see how many of us feel this way, or do we feel that our primary role is in the teaching process alone, which is certainly valuable, and I honor that. But to engage with this world, with all of its illusion and separation, I want to feel from my own experience and those who've influenced me, is part of our own awakening process. And part of that process can be passed on to those that we teach. To become engaged, not just to solve the individual problems, because we're probably not going to fix this world, but to show what the loving, non-dual, awakened mind looks like in a world like this. We live in interesting times, and you can take that both ways that's meant. So I would just like to offer that to all of us, that this is part of our process. This is part of our practice, and also part of our living the awakened mind. Thanks.
Thanks, David. We have 3 hands up, and that means about 2 to 3 minutes each if we're going to hear from everybody within our time. So bearing that in mind, Alan, you're next.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to speak about how I've been dealing with this personally. It's a very difficult time. I have tried to make this into a spiritual practice, and whenever there is some kind of negative stimuli, which is frequent, I've tried as best I can to use it to fall silent, to be still, and also to be curious about the attitudes of those who I do not agree with. I have stopped watching MSNBC, and I've been trying to watch some of Fox News and read the editorials in the Wall Street Journal, which are often quite interesting and difficult to read. But I've tried to maintain within an attitude of curiosity, and you might say not knowing, not being convinced that I know. And that's been very helpful. I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks for the effort to be concise. DK.
Hi, I'm from Vancouver Island, Canada. And one thing that I keep learning over and over again is how closely we are all connected. And as a Canadian, I am afraid. And I am afraid for my American friends. And I have American friends texting me, telling me about them wanting to move to Canada. And so I hear the fear. And in my spiritual community, first I work on acknowledging my own fear and my own anger. And then I'm open to, then that allows me to be open to everyone else's feelings, because we Canadians have lots of feelings too right now.
I'll bet.
That's all.
Thank you for the voice from Canada. Jeff, if you can do it within 2 or 3 minutes, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? I'm on a train.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll try and be quick. One, there is a large ecosystem of organizations that do what's called quote unquote bridge work, bridging or bridge building work.
Your voice isn't clear though, Jeff. Can you somehow?
Okay. I'm saying, can you hear me better now?
It's a little choppy, but we'll try.
All right, then I'll just say this. I put this in the chat and I really want to put this out there. I was struck by a student of mine, very angry at Trump voters, saying, how can they vote for someone who is convicted and who is abusive? And it struck me, and I say this as a survivor of domestic violence, that is the absolute worst thing to say to somebody in a relationship that they have trouble leaving. And people join and follow leaders for a variety of reasons. But when we belittle them and other them for staying in that relationship, it is frankly abusive to do that. And we're not going to convince anybody until we recognize there are a lot of reasons why people do the things that they do. So I'll just leave it at that because I'm not sure if anybody could hear me.
Thank you, Jeff. That's important. Okay, Jerry, it looks like you get the last word, man.
Well, I appreciate what Alan said and also what Rick said. To place myself here, I'm a very far left Bernie Sanders AOC enthusiast, but I've had just a really unusual amount of very deep interaction with people on the far right who strongly support President Trump. And that has been in the context of the COVID crisis. And I'm a retired medical professional, and my wife is a retired physician. One of the things that I think is really important is to try to find ways that the people that we are divided apart from and disagree with are actually right or might be right, to try to find ways to see what they're seeing and understand what they're experiencing. The COVID response was absolutely infuriating to them. It was so incredibly heavy-handed, and it systematically wiped off of the discussion any possibility that there might be medicines, and in fact there are, that are effective for treating COVID without the necessity of hospitalization and intubation and vaccination and all of those things. So there's absolute rage and fury at the way that Biden and the Democrats othered those people on the right who wanted to take a little bit less heavy-handed approach and allow doctors in the field to use their clinical experience and their clinical judgment and network with each other and find things that work. So that's basically what I have to say is there are reasons for this outrage, and it has been manipulated. It has been hijacked and capitalized by forces that are not working in those people's interests. You know, they've been co-opted, but there is legitimate basis for much of what has motivated them to be so angry and to reject the status quo so strongly. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Jerry, and thanks for signing off exactly at our time limit. I want to personally thank everybody for their wise and compassionate and polite responses. I've learned a lot. I hope everybody else did. And I think this is maybe the beginning of some further conversation that needs to take place. Jack, do you want to do the signing off and any announcements that have to be made?
On a personal note, I'm moved towards supporting emergence, the eloquent, diverse views of this beautiful community. And I would like the ASI to be a platform that in 6 weeks' time, we can take this to the next step. What is it that wants to emerge? So we're gonna do a follow-up. I hadn't planned on this, but something that Wallace said, in my 20s, I worked in a cross-community teenage theatre, so Protestants and Catholics. And of course, I was a Southern Catholic in Ireland, in Belfast. And we did amazing work, and it was raw. It was full on in the face of looking at changing the culture of the youth who were reared in the Troubles. And maybe the ASI can be the platform just for us, because we had a platform. It was theatre, it was the arts, using the arts to shape the culture of spirit of what can be different, what can emerge. The purpose of the theatre was to see what do the kids want to be different. And thank you, Wallace, because I'm seeing the same thing here. We're indicating emergence. We're indicating there are other spiritual leaders, but none of us are stepping forward to see how we can do it differently now. But we're noticing my language has been curbed. What can I do is curbed. But what can we do that isn't here already? What can we do? So let's meet again in 6 weeks. I hope you can come, and let's speak as openly and honestly as we did today and see what happens between now and then. Maybe there is something we can do. I want to thank you all for coming here, and for Phil, Rick, my colleagues at the ASI. We have a role to play here. I just don't know what it is, but I just feel it in my gut. And so I'd like us to meet in 6 weeks' time if you can. And we'll put up an announcement within the next few days. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, thanks, everybody. It's an honor to be with you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Blessings, everyone.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful.